Hey, day two of our vlog about our Middle East trip. We're still in Jordan, and today we made the trip all the way 4 hours south of Amman, the beautiful capital city of Jordan, all the way to the historical archaeological site called Petra, which is in the mountains, literally carved into the rocks. It's dated to about 9,000 BC, they say, in terms of people that lived there, but the peak civilization was probably 300 years before Christ and lasting maybe 100 years, 106 AD actually, officially, when it collapsed and was absorbed into the Roman Empire. It was a very wealthy culture, very wealthy city in its heyday because of land trade routes. In fact, one of the reasons it eventually declined was that seafaring routes by then had displaced it. And amazing city, sometimes called the Rose City. Incredible large site. We walked an amazing amount of distance, actually a little over 10.9 miles, according to one of the apps that my colleague Ray Heinen had with him, and a little almost 30,000 steps. And we climbed up, and the very last part of it, there's a 2-hour turnaround to go up these 850 steps, which is 60 floors in equivalency, up the side of a mountain to the monastery, which is the largest carved in the rock kind of monument at Petra. And, being real men who don't eat quiche and kind of challenged by that number of steps, we had to do it, of course. So we did it, but we about killed ourselves doing it, and then we had to walk out. So by the time I got out of there, I had a strained back muscle that hurt all the way home. It's okay now, but it hurt. But it's a fantastic visit, and we did a lot of videos there for Sat7, but it was an amazing adventure just to see this ancient site. Unlike Ephesus, where you visit that in Turkey, Ephesus was built out of kind of like marble-like rock, and it was built above ground and on the ground. So the rocks are quarried, they're brought in, and you build the Colosseum, or you build the theater, or you build all the incredible sites that are there, including the library. But this city, Petra, was built into the rocks. It's literally carved out of these sort of what looked like to me red sandstone. I never looked it up as to what they really were. But here it is 2,000 years later. We can still see it, even though you can see bullet holes in some places where they've practiced, hitting it, and didn't do a thing. He's still amazingly preserved. So that was an incredible experience, and glad to have it. What else have we seen in Jordan? It's been kind of interesting. A lot of brown and yellow rock and dirt. I mean, that 4-hour trip, you got away from the green around Amman, and it's a country with not a lot of natural resources to be able to tap. It's a landlocked country. They only have one port, which is way down south on the Red Sea, but they do have that ability to get out there. And they are an important, stable kind of constitutional monarchy right here in the middle of things, with Iraq one way, Saudi Arabia another, and then Syria of all things, and then, of course, Israel across the Jordan River to the west. So Jordan's an important country, great to visit, first time for me. You see kind of a mix of traditional dress, meaning the robes that you typically think of the Middle East, Persian Gulf states in particular. See a lot of men and women wearing these robes, culturally or religiously. But you see a lot of Western dress as well. And as I mentioned before, the signage is all bilingual, Arabic and English. In fact, I've seen more English, I think, here in Jordan than I really even do in Lebanon, where you see English, Arabic, and French on signage. But here, everything has some kind of English. And there's more English television channels and programming available, it seems to me, than even I can pick up in Cyprus or a place like that. Certainly more than in Tunisia and Lebanon and Egypt, where I've been. The coffee's kind of interesting. Here, I discovered, talking to the guys, Arabic coffee is boiled longer, and it's typically at home, and they boil it all day long. And because they leave the grounds in there, or the beans in there all day long, the Arabic coffee is much stronger than the similar kind of coffee that you buy out in the cafe. And there it's called Turkish coffee. And you buy it, and it's, they get it in these little kind of cups like this that about knock off your head, could kill a moose. But they love it. Really, really strong Turkish or Arabic, whatever you want to call it. My friends in Lebanon kind of joke and say they refer to as Arabic. They don't say Turkish, but here they use either phrase and actually have a distinction where the Arabic coffee is typically brewed stronger. Seen a lot of American eateries. Keep listing those. I've seen now Popeyes and Baskin Robbins. You can add those to the list that I've talked about before. Very few fences. You can see fences, and you can see fences obviously around yards or what we'd call lawns, but out away from the city, a little bit, but nothing like you'd see in the U.S. or like, say, you go to Ireland and they're all rock fences over hundreds of years. But no, here it's wide open territory. Consequently, there are still men or boys acting as shepherds. Saw a lot of shepherds and a lot of flocks of sheep or sheep and goats mix in our 4-hour trip down to Petra and back. It's just part of the culture, part of what they do, part of a certain number of people who live in that fashion, and the sheep and the goats are extremely important to their livelihood. It's how they live, how they make their living. I thought it was interesting to learn, again, from some Jordanian friends and contacts, there's no problem in Jordan going from Jordan to Israel or Israel to Jordan if you have the right kind of passport and papers. It encourages tourism. Jordan would like to do even more of that, but that's not the case in Lebanon and Israel, where if you've been in Israel, you can't go into Lebanon, they'll stop you, because technically Lebanon is at war with Israel. I say technically because right now they're not shooting at each other, but there's disputed territory in the southern tier of Lebanon that in the last conflict, Israel came in and took it and has not given it back, and Lebanon, of course, objects to that, and consequently there is this resistance politically back and forth. So if you visit Israel, which I've done privilege of doing twice, these days they don't stamp your passport, they don't stamp a little paper, they give you a little paper that you keep while you're in country and you return it to the agent on the way out that indicates you've been there, but there's nothing in your passport that even says you've been in the state of Israel. And last time I was there, I asked the young agent, why is that? And he said, because there's a lot of people like you that don't want that stamp, and other countries that they visit that don't want that stamp, and consequently it's incognito. They do it that way. Jordan doesn't seem to have that issue, and that's again back to Jordan being sort of this political kind of a stable constitutional monarchy, but a lot of freedoms and a lot of economic progress and blessing, and the ability to do a variety of things and the ability to travel quite easily, and very important as they try to maintain friendships across the Arab lines. A lot of people in the States don't realize that the Arab countries, 24 of them, they are as different from one another as France is from Germany, is from England. Now, that's a no-brainer. We understand that. It's part of our history, World War I, World War II. We look at all that. We get that. And the languages are distinctive. But here, you think, well, they're all Arab. Well, sort of, yeah. They're all Arabic speaking. Like, U.S. and Jamaica, Canada, and England, we all speak English, but a little different variety. Sometimes you can't understand each other. So it's like that, and there are dialects, but it's far more than that. There are differences of political philosophy and positioning and national interests, where some Arab countries simply do not like each other and do not cooperate in ways that you think they might. And consequently, Jordan being one of the more cooperative ones, for want of a better phrase, is quite important for what they do. So it was a very enjoyable day, challenging day, because we walked 11 miles and kind of wore ourselves to a frazzle. There are, by the way, the steps up to the monastery at Petra, that like 60 floor equivalent, according to the internet, that's 850 steps that have been carved into the rock that you climb. I heard some guy talk about 950 or 1,000, but you easily make 1,000 steps to get there, but there's 850 actual steps, and it's steep. And they isolated themselves. That's the comment I made in a video while we were there when we finally got there, that the monks in that period of time were ascetics who isolated themselves from culture. Now, one of the positive things maybe out of that is they had all this time to sit as scribes and to, in the days before printing presses, to transcribe by hand books or even the scripture, but they had very little to no impact on their on their culture. And as a result of that, I respectfully disagree with their approach. It's kind of a Christ against culture, or Christ other than culture, or separate from culture. What I certainly would affirm personally, and what Sat7 affirms as well, in what they're trying to do in Middle East, North Africa, is Christ the engager of culture, or Christ the transformer of culture, where we're told to be in the world, not of the world, but we're also told to go into the world, all in John chapter 17. So we're in the world by virtue of our birth, our physical creation, and our new birth is to make us different and to be not of the world. We're supposed to have different values, a different philosophy of life, a Christian worldview. But then the Lord says, I'm sending you into the world. And it won't always be peaches and cream. And it isn't certainly for some of the Christians here in the Middle East, depending on the country. But they are resilient people of the Christian faith. And it's a privilege to interact with them and to be able to meet them. Here in Jordan, by the way, I'll wrap up with that. The church is able to exist. There are many Christian people in Jordan, Jordanian Christians. You can even have Jordanians are free to visit a church. Probably won't receive much pressure from that. Where there becomes a problem, or can become a problem, is with respect to conversion or proselytizing, which is to say changing one's faith. So as the church reaches out and does, operates with the Great Commission, which it's supposed to do, it has to be very careful, and the person on the other end has to be very careful, because if they publicly say or actually do change their faith from whatever religious background, the dominant one or otherwise, there can be repercussions for them personally or legally, even politically. So that's Jordan. Beautiful place, beautiful airport, beautiful city, beautiful people. Thoroughly enjoying being here. I'll catch you again from Jordan on this blog.